First of all, Chairwoman Manchin, I want to thank you. Number one, I want to thank you for the recent award that we got of about $7.7 million to do economic development, workforce development, and health-related outcomes in the Appalachian region. So first of all, I want to thank you for that. But also, I would like for you to tell the people, as I always like to, tell them who you are and what you do.
Well, Toni, first of all, thank you. It's always great to be with you and have conversations about the great work that you're doing and that we're supporting. So thank you. And I am Gayle Manchin, not Fed Co-Chair Manchin.
You're Fed Co-Chair to me.
I'm Gayle. And very proud to serve the Appalachian region, 13 states, 423 counties, 26 million people. So it's a large entity, but we share much in common throughout our region, and it's just a joy to be able to work in the part of the country that I grew up and have lived all my life.
Well, Appalachia is a place I now call home. And I always say to people, because people have often asked me, I grew up here in Southeast DC and now live in, Hardee County in Appalachia. But people ask me often, you mentioned the 26 million people, 423 counties. It's also 13 states. 13 and so states. One of my first questions for you is really about, I think, something that's not just within the Appalachian region, but we see throughout the United States. And I always like to say something simple, which is I think that issues, conditions, and responses that come out of Appalachia really are those models that could work throughout America. So one of the things I want to ask you about is kind of the great successes that you've seen in workforce development and economic development through the ARC. Can you highlight some of the things that you think are like the great things that ARC has done in that workforce and economic development?
Well, when we talk about workforce development, it really always goes back to people. It's the people that we are training, retraining, educating, recruiting, things that improve the quality of life for people and their families. And when we do that, then we are also creating economic development and economic vitality within a community. So the more we can move that web out, working together, because we do have so much in common, the better our results are going to be. And our ARISE, our multi-state initiative, is sort of proof of that. You're proof of that with the community education group and your $7.7 million grant that is training people that have suffered and recovered from substance use disorder, but also you're giving back purpose, you're giving back hope, you're giving a new life for people to be able to experience. But even above all of that, you are growing now a much more a community that is alive and thriving and growing, and how important that is. And you're building a healthcare, which we are such a shortage of healthcare workers in our region and actually throughout the country. So fulfilling many, so again, it's not one issue, it's not one method or one answer, but it's how do we work together to build that. And I think our ARISE grants do that. I think our INSPIRE grants, which is all around substance use and addiction, and how do we provide that continuum of care, rehab, getting back into training, a job, a safe place to live, transportation, childcare, whatever those support services that are needed, that we're in there through our INSPIRE grants, helping to provide that, working with our communities. So it is a continuum. I think anything that we do, we're growing, we're expanding, incorporating. And so we're doing it at one level. Your grant is doing that at its level, that expansion, that addressing the needs, not only of the people, but for workforce, for the training, for our communities to be able to grow and be vibrant.
Well, thank you for that. But you know, we've got 13 states, so you got to manage a lot, right? So you manage 13 states, and I don't know if people understand this or are aware of this, but you have a governor representative or you've got a federal representative, then you've got other representatives, and you've got to manage all of these personalities, right? And not just the personalities, but you've got to manage the personalities, the economies, the state-based priorities, and all of that. And again, that's what economics are, that's what workforce development is. It's not any sort of monolithic group of anybody.
Right.
So, and I know you can't say, I know Joe, and Joe has not literally your Joe, but a Joe, random Joe.
Right.
And they have a program, but can you talk about maybe a bit of what you're seeing throughout the region in kind of economic development, workforce development? You're you know what, we need to do more of that, less of that, and that's going to help all of us. Give us some of the ideas of stuff you're seeing throughout the AR, maybe grantees or programs, or just your vision for economic and workforce development.
Sure. Well, I think that in traveling, once I got to travel after COVID and see these wonderful projects, but you're right, it was 13 states doing wonderful things, and we're the Appalachian region. Mm-hmm. And so what I had to continue to try to impress upon our governors and our state leaders is that if our region does better, all the states are going to do better. And so growing the economy and the development of the Appalachian region is very important to the 13 states. And I think once we got them talking to each other, they're beginning to realize that whether we're talking about recruiting industry in, whether we're talking about creating more tourism, we're talking about how do we connect the dots. Mm-hmm. You get to the state line, things don't just come to an end. So whether we're increasing trails, our riverfront property, whether we're growing the economy so that if an industry comes into one state, perhaps training is going on in adjacent areas, but it shows that the results then become bigger. Mm-hmm. Now, what I also realized is that at that federal level, the federal agencies could be working better together. We all have had an abundance of money through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act and the Inflation Reduction Act, money that we have now that we won't have in the future. But let's not be on top of each other mm-hmm. with grants. Let's work together to make sure that money that's going into a region is expanding and growing it and not duplicating or leaving a big gap somewhere. And so as I encourage and try to work with other federal agencies, we should be the model mm-hmm. for how state agencies can work and then how our local communities. We shouldn't be competing with each other. Mm-hmm. We need to compete globally mm-hmm. and with another part of the country. Mm-hmm. And I think that we're beginning to understand that the Appalachian region is so rich in people, in energy resources, in so many endeavors that we have been a real force in this country in keeping it strong. And I think we'll continue to be a real force if we pull all these pieces together. Yeah. We pull our academic institutions together, providing cybersecurity training throughout the region, mm-hmm. healthcare, providing these services that are so needed for our remote areas, for our little medical clinics and telehealth. How do we pull our training facilities together to give our people, again, going back to our people, the best opportunities to get the best training possible or retraining, recruiting people in without it being a hardship, mm-hmm. so that we're providing services and resources in the most abundant way that we can.
And I want to stick with that for a minute. You know, I had our whole team at Community Education Group buy into a concept. And that concept is, what is our job? Yes, we have a grant to do workforce development and training, but what's our mission, right? What's our mission? And our mission is to bring resources, opportunity, and attention to the Appalachia region. That's our mission. Not to put necessarily resources into community education groups' pocket, but to bring resources, opportunity, and attention to the Appalachia region. And that is where I want to go with my next question for you. My next question for you is really about what we can do as that community, as that ecosystem called Appalachia. What can we do to increase public and private partnerships, right? What do we do to get the solar panel company to come here? What do we do to bring research opportunities here and to develop, I think, a more balanced public and private partnership opportunity? Whether, you know, we've got, you know, good brands in Appalachia like Uncle Nearest Bourbon. It's like one of the biggest Black-owned bourbons, I think, in the world. But it's in our part of the country. What can we do to make sure that more businesses are coming here and can find the worker that they want here?
Well, I always go back, the word that comes to my mind is being proactive. Don't wait until you've lost something or you're trying to get something to start scrambling to figure out what we need to do. Conversations need to be ongoing continuously between our academic institutions and the industry that is that's already there. What's the chances that they may close shop and go somewhere else because they can't get a trained workforce in that area? You know, I find it so frustrating. My background is education. I always found it so frustrating that we weren't having K-12 didn't talk to higher ed. Higher ed didn't talk to the businesses out there. Were we providing the type of training that was needed in the area for the people we had or for people we wanted to recruit in? And yes, there are challenges. You look at the central part of our region, that's the most rugged part of the Appalachian mountain range. So it's harder to build roads, it's harder to bring broadband, it's harder to recruit. But that doesn't mean it can't be done. But you can't wait for something to happen. You have to go out and actively research it, talk to your elected officials, need to be talking to their private industry that they have. We appreciate you. What can we do to make things better for you here? And that private industry needs to be saying, how can we really be a part of this community? You need a playground, a park in your let us be a part. It's all about building relationships. And I think it's about, particularly in the healthcare world, with the issues that we face, the epidemics, the COVID, addiction. These are things that it's not just about the healthcare facility. It's about how are we training people? How are we going into schools? Letting young people know what are the opportunities out there for them and how easy can we make it for them to reach those goals, to have a dream and to reach that dream, to encourage people to be entrepreneurs and think big in a community, but you can't do it alone. And I think too often we have siloed ourselves. We're a business, or we're elected officials, or we're education, and nothing ever gets really done. And I just think it goes back to being proactive, building relationships, and understanding at the end of the day, it is about people and trying to improve the quality of life for people throughout our communities and throughout our region. So that we talk about that last mile for broadband. You know, we want that broadband to go out to the last mile. We want a lot of things to go out to that last mile. We want the child living out the last mile to know they can dream and be anything they want to be. but it takes effort on more than just one group to make that happen.
You have hit the nail on the head, and this is where I'm going to kind of go out of what I had written on the paper, but you just said the piece that's, I think, the why I do what I do, right? I mean, and it was this kid who came to me one day who had been working. I live in Hardy County, and I'm a woman of a certain age, and so I had them kind of help me around the place, picking up sticks and piling them up, that kind of thing. And one day I said to him, well, you're going back to school. He was at WVU, and he said, well, I'm not going back to school. And I said, well, why not? He said, because we only have one car, and I need the car at school because of where he was living. And he said, but my mother needs the car. And I'm like, it doesn't make sense. Your mother doesn't work. And because she has to take my sister to court. And then she has to take her to mandatory AA meetings, or she's going to go to jail. And so I'm going to stay home until that process is finished. And I'm like, no, you're not. All right, you're going to go back to school. Mm-hmm. And it gave me a different understanding of what those miles were like for other people, right? I think people don't think about kind of what are the overall family impacts, right? Again, kid is at school. He's doing really good. He's actually graduated and moved actually to Pittsburgh, still in Appalachian.
Terrific.
Yes, and he's doing actually really good engineering. So I'm very proud of him. ROTC, great. And sister is doing great and has been in recovery for probably like 8 years now. So that's a winning story. But I think that's what we want to do with our workforce development. That's what we want to do in the region as a whole. It's like, kind of like when Kennedy said, if we can give folks transportation, a path out, education, healthcare, right? If we can give them these three things, these folks might have successful lives.
That's right.
And I think that's exactly it. We have to build that last mile. And I think sometimes it's hard. It's hard but I think that, again, people don't always know who they don't know, and they don't necessarily know the people of Appalachia. So, I think sometimes people think I'm like trying to butter the duck when I talk to you, but I'm always so proud of you because it's not just that you're from here, it's that you get here and you put yourself into the position of other people, mm-hmm. right? You understand their lives, and that's why these programs are the programs that they are. So I just want to personally say thank you. I didn't want to get emotional.
Well, no, but the thing of it is, Toni, just like you were there to step in and give some guidance and support and help. And not every, like you say, not every family has that. So how many did we lose because there wasn't someone to say, no, we can figure this out. And I think more and more that's what we have to look for, these connectors, so that if a child doesn't return to school, maybe even to high school, mm-hmm. Not even to college, but to high school, that there's somebody that knows and is looking to see, why isn't this child coming back?
Right.
Why did this person quit coming to work? Mm-hmm. Or why did this person quit coming to AA meetings? Any of those things that people are trying to rebuild themselves and get back, but there has to be a support system out there, mm-hmm. and it's not one entity. And that's what I'm saying. We have to work across lines of public, private, healthcare, education. We all have to work together and have conversations. I mean, bringing these people together for a meeting, the time that they spend networking will be just as valuable as any speaker that they hear at the conference.
And that's our plan, right? Our idea is that if we can deconstruct the silos you spoke of earlier, for us are around health, workforce development, economic development. If we can get folks to help us figure out a plan, what are we going to do? Because it's not just the healthcare folks, it's not just the economic development folks, it's not just the workforce development folks, it's not just government, this is not private partnership. It's all of us together figuring out what we're going to do. Because again, our job, our mission is resources, opportunity, and attention in this region. And not one of us can do it alone. I know we don't have much kind of time left. And what I want to talk a bit about is the thing that I think is the most important thing. I'm very happy with my $7.7 million. and we're going to do everything that we said we're going to do and more. We're going to over deliver. One of the things that I find that just tickles me is the interstate initiative, because it's what I think the government should be doing. We talked about the 423 counties. I think something like 40% of them buttress up on more than one state, right? And so I think that when we look at things like Reuniting, like HRSA, the Department of Health and Human Services, Health Resources Services Administration, which provides a lot of care and treatment in the United States, uses this rural health analyzer, and it uses zip code data. And I argue with them all the time. And I say, you know what? That's trash. It's trash because nobody knows that zip code line but you. Yeah. And it's like, if I'm coming out of a holler and the service is that far and it's over there, I'm going to go get it. So I want you to talk to me so I can talk to them more, right, about the significance and how the federal government, you talked about it a little bit earlier, but I want you to really spend some time with me on it, about how the federal government could actually replicate this model. Because you guys do it well. You figured it out. Okay, we're going to start with 3 states. Why can't the federal government do this in a big RFA or in all of its RFAs? Say, if you've got multi-states, do multi-states. Tell us what counties. You tell me.
Well, I think that is a quandary and continues to be. I have found in working, I was laughing, I was in a meeting last week, and I said, I have been in this position now 3 years, going in my 4th year, and I thought coming in, you always think about bureaucracy, federal bureaucracy. Everything takes so long and it takes so much. And I think in watching this now, I'm still caught up in the frustration of things take too long. People write grants, and it seems like it takes us forever to get through that process and let them know, yes, go for it. And yet, on the other hand, I also know that to do things right, there has to be a plan, and there has to be a structure, and people have to agree to that. So somewhere, I think we haven't quite reached that balance yet. I think those of us in this federal bureaucracy need to keep pushing and advocating. We can do it better. We can cut out some of the webbing in here and get from point A to point B in a much easier way. But I think that's still a struggle. But I do believe that through this funding that we have had under this administration, that particularly addresses rural America, that for the first time we were not asked to try to transplant an inner city program into rural Appalachia. They no, take the money and decide how do you do it in rural Appalachia. And I think we're getting there. But understand that we haven't had years and years and years to do this. We have always been told that we can adapt to somebody else's program. And now we're saying, no, we're creating wonderful programs. You're creating, with this $7.7 million, this is a program that should be replicated, and we can. But this is new in the game. And I just believe that we're learning. I think, the USDA, the EDA, EPA, all of these people are coming to the reality that one size does not fit all. I think at the end of the day, that's the greatest lesson that we have learned in this country. One size does not fit all. So have the flexibility, have a structure, but have the flexibility to recognize that how we do it in Appalachia is not how you're going to do it in New York City or Chicago. And understand that whether it's rebuilding lives, bringing in industry, repurposing abandoned coal mines, whatever it is, we have the wherewithal to do it. And we have the commitment and people dedicated and entrepreneurs that they will figure out what to do and how to do it. But it's having that flexibility that it doesn't have to be the way it's always been. We can do it differently. We can do it better. And I think some of the grants that are coming out of this Arise will be game-changing in terms of replicating things that work better, that are more successful, and really do improve the quality of life for people.
Well, I think we should end right there, don't you? Because my next question for you was what's next, but I think you just gave me the what's next. I think that, I'll go ahead and ask the question since I've tossed it out there. But is where we are going to end where I started, which is I really and truly do believe that the innovation that comes out of Appalachia are models for rural America, but for America as a whole.
Yes.
So you want to tell us, last but not least, what's next? What's great next for you?
Well, what's next is this community education group.
Us.
You're coming together. And so I just want to welcome everyone for being here on behalf of the Appalachian Regional Commission as part of your support team for what you're doing. But to the people that are here for this conference, how they are changing their own lives. But more importantly, how they're going to be changing lives all across the region. And it's going to improve quality of life, not only for the people, but for the communities where they live. And so I want to say thank you, congratulations, and get to work.
All right. And I want to thank you and congratulations on you and your team here at ARC for all the work that you've done for the 26 million people of the Appalachia region, the 13 states, and the 423 counties. And on behalf of the ARC Community Education Group, I would like to welcome you to the 2024 Syndemic Summit. Let the work begin.